It'll all be memorized now. Okay. But anyway, he talked a lot about the article Mike Lucas. Had anybody read that article? I don't know if they even posted, but Mike talked about at York uh, that their spending only went up 1.3%, but their tax requests were significantly higher, and they were being somewhat limited. It seemed really strange to me when I was superintendent at COSED. York and us were about the same size, and they were building a new middle school, as were we, and their tax request was 15 cents. And ours ended up, we sold it as 43, but it ended up being 37 cents. So there was quite a difference. Looks like we lost the other Matt. Well, we're not having the best night, but any thoughts about funding? He talked about casinos and legal marijuana. Would that sell in your community?
No.
Probably the marijuana.
That's big out west, is it?
Yeah.
I've probably mentioned this in the finance or business management class. I have a proposal that would not increase gambling that much. But I think the legislature should pass a law that says you can build a casino within 1 mile of any state that has gambling, which means there would be a big casino in Omaha. And would not, people wouldn't, you're not putting in one in Kearney, you're not putting one in every community like some states. But I think you would really see a lot of income, and I don't think it would increase gambling that much. But I just talked to our senator about it, and he thought we don't want to increase gambling. He didn't understand my concept, I guess, and maybe you don't either. Kyle, yours was staff shortages. What's the issue there?
We're on the charter school piece, Dr. Nelson.
No, we're on the school issues where you listed what were the big issues in your community. You listed staff shortages, student health, family dynamics, and human resource management, and then public perception of education as a profession.
Well, now I'm recalling that. Sorry, I feel like that was a while ago. Must be homecoming week.
Yeah,
I put and I shouldn't complain here, but I don't get very many applicants for jobs for certified positions. And I think that's going to be a real challenge because a lot of my staff here are veterans. And it's nice to have more than one applicant when you're trying to fill these positions because they're so important. And I just think for schools, and I know it already is a challenge for Western Nebraska schools, so I shouldn't complain, but it's going to be a big issue. I think that's coming in the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I think you're right, and you're in a pretty good location.
Yeah, and like I said, I shouldn't complain, but I guess I can when I only get 2 apps for a certified position, at a high school between an hour from Omaha and half hour from Lincoln. So
yeah, that's we had a student that did their field study in their specialist program on teacher availability and how often teachers ended up within 50 miles of where they graduated. And if you're out there, there's not too many universities by Bayard, is there, Matt?
No, Shattern State's probably the closest one in Nebraska. So, yeah, we got WNCC that's 30 miles out, and you can do a lot of satellite stuff through WNCC.
Yeah. How about hiring teachers? You have any issues with that?
Yeah, especially in foreign language. That's a really tough one out here. We got in on the University of Nebraska multicultural teacher deal that's now done. But yeah, it's tough to get foreign language for sure. And people with actually English has been a tough one too. So a lot of different ones. Elementary schools are okay though.
Yeah, they usually have good numbers. Why is English a shortage? Too many papers to read. That's what I hear anyway.
I'd throw in advanced
Too many
math too.
What's that?
Advanced math.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's.
So we had one opening and we had 5 candidates and none of them were a good fit. So last spring we restructured our math program. All of our teachers teach 6 periods and then they have one common plan, one personal plan. And we had restructured everything so that they were all going to teach a 7th assignment for this year. And we had a gal from Iowa move July 20th, I think. And we hired her and she started the school year with us. But it was not a whole lot of quality candidates in that field.
Yeah. All those people are engineers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're probably, math is a tough issue. How about music teachers? That was one that was kind of scary. When I had a teacher who wanted to take a job in Lincoln. She's a great music teacher, and it was going to happen, and I did not allow her to make that move. It was late in summer, and Lincoln thinks they can do that. Maybe you run into that, Kyle. I don't know, but I said, I'll support you next year, but I can't get somebody this late. And she agreed that she would do that. So
I was too nice, Dr. Nelson, and let him go to Lincoln and Omaha late in the year last spring. And for applicants for music, it was tough.
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate to get a couple very good ones, but
yeah,
it's tough. You're right.
I had a policy after I switched schools. That was when we were at Adams, which is only 25 miles from Lincoln. We had a policy at COZAD that we put in that said, if you were going to, after June 1st, I think it was, if you were going to apply for a job, you needed to notify the superintendent first, and he would let you know whether he would release you. And at that late, sometimes it's their hometown. There's really a big reason for them to make that move, but it's hard when they've gone through the whole process, been offered a job, and then we say no. So yeah, I think it really was fairly well understood, and I think it worked out pretty well. Let's see. Kayleen isn't here. She was saying school safety. She's in Houston, I think a fairly large minority population, if I remember right. And first she said she had 4,000 students, and then she came back and said, I'm sorry, it was 2,300. That's not real good math, and let's see. Matt, you talked about poverty. Why is that a big issue?
Yeah, in Western Nebraska, I think poverty I always say, I think Baird is probably the worst place to be if you're poor in Nebraska. As far as any kind of services, we have, if you're rural and you're poor, it's a tough spot to be in. We have, I think with poverty comes mobility too. Some of our housing out here is pretty tough. So when we get people in that move, I think at our last calculation for our Title I numbers, we had 28% mobility, which is twice the state average. So poverty definitely has an issue as far as what the kids come to school with. We've done a lot of different things to try to mitigate that, but it's really hard when kids are coming to school so far behind.
And you gave us quite a list of school activities that you do to address poverty and to address some health issues and those kinds of things. Sounds like.
Yeah, it just so happened that I was presenting to the ESU 17 last week on that same thing, so I kind of cheated on that one. I apologize.
Oh, we noticed, but. Let's see. Yeah, you had some good issues. Malia, you said family factors. What kinds of things?
Yeah, that's kind of. Yeah, it's kind of speaking as in the classroom a little bit. I mean, it just seems like we're daily trying to address more of the family issues within the classroom, the broken homes. And I have a very small class, but when you look at the kiddos that come from homes that are a normal structure, it's just fewer and fewer. And so those, that extra help at home and stuff for homework changes and just changes your day. You just don't know how they're going to come to school that day. So doing a lot of counseling and different activities to try and get them through a different day. And you're not quite sure if they're going to have a outburst at some point or another either. So.
Yeah, that's family structures are declining, it seems, from what I observe out there.
And a lot of that comes with some financial issues. At Scribner, we're at 60% free and reduced, which that's challenging. And along with that's mobility too. So.
Did anybody see the was something, I'm not sure where I got it. I think it was on the news. Oh, I know what it was. Any of you watch New Amsterdam? That's the hospital show. Anyway, he was giving out statistics that said in Washington, D.C., just to show what your zip code difference could make, in inner city Washington, D.C., the average age of your expectation of life is 68. And in the suburbs, it was 95. I mean, that's within a few miles of themselves, but it's the neighborhood and the medical services, those kinds of things. Chelsea, you talked about funding. So you're talking about financing?
Yes. At the preschool level, that is really, really hard to get because things are so different than elementary schools.
Mm-hmm.
We, for example, have to have our classroom set up into centers or stations. So each classroom has at least 10 different learning stations that we have the kids work on those play schemes and interactions and social skills and just academic pieces as well. So you have to have a lot of furniture and you have to have a lot of toys. And per Rule 11 and our environmental rating scale, you have to swap your toys and rotate at least every 2 to 3 weeks. So with that comes a lot of things and a lot of storage space. And then as well, for example, like in my classroom this year, I have 3 really big behavior kiddos. So for example, today I actually lost like 15 different toys and like 30 baskets because they're getting chucked across the room and different things like that. So it just seems like a cycle that we just keep going through a lot of those things.
Is your learning, early childhood learning or preschool, is that targeted students then? It's not general population?
No, it isn't. What we have is it's a preschool based on need. So we have like a scale that we use and parents fill in an application. Probably for public schools, one of the only applications that you usually fill out because we have a sliding fee scale. We want to reach those kids that really, really need preschool, which is great. But I think now we have so many needy families and needy students that number is just increasing. So then we're kind of filling in with that. And it does show in all of those aspects that I kind of talked about, where you do see a lot of those needs and things going on and the parent help and all of those things as well.
Dylan, you talked about, you're in the same school district.
Yep.
Right. And you talked about student attitude. What's your number one one? What's
Yeah. For me, the student attitude, and I think more specifically, and for me in my classes, is the apathy of some of our kids that they'll come in and they don't, I mean, they're literally walking into the classroom and sitting down and they don't care. And that's kind of a thing over how I was raised and brought up, school means something. And some of the kids I'm getting that they literally are just walking in and ready to walk back out. They don't care about the grade. They don't care about some of the things they're supposed to be learning. And, I'd kind of go back to Malia, a lot of the stuff for the kids that I'm getting, bringing in baggage that obviously I can't see right off the bat what kind of stuff they're bringing, family and the socioeconomic status of some of the kids. It's one of those things that's tough. And I feel like my school's doing a lot better with some of the social emotional stuff, kind of how to reach some of our kids. Because like I said, they'll come in and they're just ready to leave. So it's one of those things that's kind of tough as a teacher to get through to some of them that, hey.
So you were in a larger school district previously, weren't you?
Yeah, and that was one of the tougher things for me. I was in Millard before I came here, and in a fairly affluent area. So the kids came in, sat down. It was one of those things. It was my first teaching job. So they came in, sat down, had all the eyes of all the kids, and they were ready to learn. And then when I came here, some of the kids that are not Western Omaha kids that didn't care, this and that. And so it was kind of a little curveball for me early in my teaching career. So yeah, it was, and it still is one of those things that I work with.
Yeah. We'll call it a challenge.
It's a little bit of a challenge, yes.
Okay, Heidi, you talked about classroom size. Was that your top one, or was it, you did them in reverse order, your numbering?
I did it least to greatest, I think.
Okay, so HC was your number one, right?
Well, one of the things I think someone touched on that I think that's probably the most important thing that we're talking about is school safety and social and emotional go hand in hand. So if a kiddo doesn't feel safe, whether it's because of their own social emotional needs or the safety of the school, it doesn't matter what curriculum we have, what phenomenal teachers we have. There's really nothing that we can do to help support them. So, I mean, with funding, with, all those other things that were kind of itemized out, even student to teacher ratio, I just feel like it's our job to make them feel safe, whether it's internally or externally within a building. And I really genuinely think without that, then there's really no other learning that can go on.
Danielle, you talked about too much autonomy with teachers. What does that mean?
We've had years and years of kind of teachers doing their own thing, building their own curriculum. We don't really have a set K-12, pre-K-12 curriculum. So we just have issues with, first grade may not make it through what they're supposed to do, and there's no communication to second, and kids are getting behind. We're starting to see decreases in student achievement. Everybody likes to do what they like to do, and people don't want to change. And we're seeing a lot of the same issues. I mean, everybody's talking about poverty and, socioeconomic issues and parental involvement. But we're trying to tell our staff that those are just out of our control. We can't change the kids and how they're coming in. So we've got to figure out strategies to help them achieve regardless. And we're trying to unify a lot of things, put some procedures in place, teach teachers strategies for engagement as an example. And this year is our first year we're implementing the Marzano framework in our district. So a lot of change is coming, and we do have a lot of veteran teachers that really like to do things the way they've always done it. And we're not getting results.
It's a challenge
it's a big challenge to try and get them to change their thinking and realize that we're going to have to change because our kids aren't. These are all things we can't control. So the things we can control are instructional practices and how we reach kids. And we've got to do a better job.
You made the statement, the most significant impact on student achievement is an effective teacher. I've read where it's the most impactful is the principal. I think because how he directs and works with teachers.
Right.
I've seen school districts that have really changed because of a change in the principal, but I have a real passion for first-year principals that have to sometimes face an experienced staff that's not totally excited about changing. The next part of our next topic we had was bullying. What did you have to say about it, rather than me reading through these? What is bullying?
I think that's something that students have a hard time defining. especially in a lower elementary, what we would consider bullying and what a child considers bullying. There's been so much talk about it, which there should be, but I think sometimes it makes them hard for a student to kind of decipher between what is and what isn't.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
it's kind of gray in some areas. As you get older, it's more defined with the social media and sexual harassment and stuff like that.
And then I would echo not only educating our kids on what the real definition is, but parents, because you hear, I mean, as a mom, I hear it all the time, just in conversations with interactions with my own kiddos or their friends. And just, it's, in my opinion, it's a very overly used word.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes teasing becomes bullying. Yeah, so. How do you address that? How's your school addressing that? Any of it?
I think that Kearney has done a good job of, they haven't done it just as the bullying piece, but they've really brought it in the bullying, the social emotional, and the suicide prevention all together, trying to really impact those as a large group because they sometimes do go hand in hand, but really training staff on how to react, how to respond to those situations, and just in your teaching, how you teach those kids what it is to be a bully and how they need to change their thinking and how that can really hurt someone. Again, goes hand in hand with that social emotional piece where you're really working on those skills with the kids and showing them, giving them, I know at the preschool level, a lot of it is we're modeling, we're showing them, we're doing it with them, walking them through, like we do problem solving steps. So we're walking them through that as they're younger. So when those things do come up, it's a lot easier for them to kind of deal with. I know it's not ever going to be super easy, but we're trying to start at that young age to really give them the toolbox that they need to succeed.
Many of you put links up of programs that are helpful in addressing bullying, and so I was kind of interested in something you could share that you were doing. Thank you, Chelsea. What still haven't come on a definition of bullying yet, though, have we?
It's like that imbalance of power that happens repeatedly. So that's the thing that we use is just the standard definition. And a lot of times, like we said earlier, I think a lot of kids just sometimes kids are mean. So we kind of joke about it. It's like the world's going to hell because we're teaching social emotional stuff. We have like 3 different programs to teach social emotional things in our school right now, and we just have 200 kids in our elementary school. So we're just focusing a lot on kindness and empathy. I saw some people writing about second step a lot, and I know a lot of districts are going to that, and just a lot of at our school we're also doing like a lot of common area expectation stuff, just polite, focusing on the Be Kind initiative. And then I guess the last thing that we do is just like Leader in Me stuff. That's essentially another SEL program to address the needs of just, kids in general.
Usually, definition of bullying is repeated events that are negative to a particular student. And I think one of you mentioned that it needs to be repeated, or it can't be the one comment that set somebody off. I have a sign in my office that I'm not sure where I took it, but it just says, "Say hello to the lonely child." And I think that you can see them when you walk into school. I visit quite a few schools, and you can see the loners and that maybe are looking for friendship. And at that age, friendships is very important. And I think, Matt, was that you or the other Matt that sent the article about the boy in Tennessee?
Was that the one for where the students wore like which one was that one?
No, this one had to do with a boy who had texted or email discussion between 2 of his best friends, and he kind of indicated that he felt like he might be a homosexual.
Yeah.
And then
that
the students put it on Facebook or something, and he read it, and I think his dad thought he was upstairs studying, and when he went upstairs, the student had committed suicide. And
yeah, that those kind of things are just they just happen more and more because the computer makes it so easy for kids to just be ruthless. I think that was one that was used as just being ruthless to each other.
yeah, that was the question. I was going to say, what has really changed in bullying? And in a few years ago, I and another writer, we had an article published in the Eastern Research Journal, which I'm sure is top notch, but it was about bullying, and the last thing we wrote in it, and it was far long enough ago, was that the next problem is going to be social media, and it has become that. And it's so sad to see some of that, and how there was there was a case where these students were bullying this girl, and it was a group, and they would say, oh, tomorrow's going to be, let's all wear blue, or tomorrow we're going to have a party over at Jane's. And they all knew it wasn't going to happen. And so then that student would go over to Jane's house, and they'd all laugh about it, that there wasn't a party, or that she would come to school dressed like she thought would be with the group, and it wasn't. And sometimes you have students who are bullied that look like they ought to be bullies. I mean, we had a kid once, a big kid, eighth grader, I think, and he could not articulate what he was thinking, and they would tease him where most kids would say, "Oh, same to you," or whatever, and it just ate on him. And one day after school, somebody said something to him about whatever they were teasing him about, and he went after him and threw him down and pulled his kid's pants down and actually sodomized him, which took it out of our hands, became a police deal then. But it was the kind of thing you could almost see coming. Counselors were working with him, but it's just a quiet kid that didn't know how to manage all that. So, but there's the technology is social media is really the culprit now, and you're seeing articles once a month about some child that's committed suicide because something they felt left out, or they felt ostracized, or whatever that might be. So those are the touchy ones that I don't know what kind of action can a person do about that. What are your schools doing about that?
It's our job to do something. I think just having the moral courage to just confront and encounter those people who want to do harm is our jobs. And if we're not doing it, we're not doing our job. So investigating carefully, getting facts. I always think that's the nice thing about cyberbullying is everything's right in front of me when it gets reported to me. The tough ones are when kids are talking to each other, and trying to put together evidence of a group that was sitting at a lunch table or something like that, or in the hallway. But cell phones sure make it easy.
Yeah.
So, but it's our job to follow our policies, do our jobs, and like I know somebody said, make our schools safe.
Yeah. There's some schools that have a theme or a motto: if you see it, tell about it, or something. One of the things I really believe is these people are not bullying alone. They're not sending a message to that one kid. They're sending it out to 4 or 5 of their friends. And, I think you got to get those people to talk to somebody that say it isn't right, we talked about in the law class, we talked about the Shen case where students were charged with harassment and bullying. And for some, and it was really bad stuff that, hanging black students and that kind of stuff. And finally, there were only 6 of them. Finally, one of them told. And then when it got into looking at it, the judge even sentenced 4 of the students. There were 2 that were really involved. They posted it, but other students just hit the like button, and the judge saw that as endorsing that, and so those students were expelled also. Yeah, it just bothers me that, and so many young kids have it. I think 5th, 6th graders that have their cell phone. I'm not sure they know what they do. Now, one of you talked about bringing the police in, or a policeman to come in and tell about how text messages and email can be researched. And I think maybe that's not an all bad idea, But I don't know who.
Yeah, we do that. We do that in Kimball, kind of as a preemptive education opportunity for our students. And so many kids, I think they're safe if they're doing it digitally. And nobody can see it. They're not going to get in trouble. And so I think it was a really powerful message for our kids to realize you can delete it off of your phone, but a subpoena can get everything you put out there is available to anyone, and you're not safe from repercussions.
So many people use the ESU server, their email address is the ESU, and they can go research that. They can find whether a teacher is doing something inappropriate or not, which I've had happen. But so it's something that they need to be aware of, that those kind of things can occur. I was thinking maybe that is why Matt is having trouble. Now, some of these service units have filters, and if he's kind of come in on a school computer, maybe there's an issue there. I'm not sure. Okay, our third topic for the next lesson was charter schools and vouchers. Who argued for charter schools? Okay, Matt, what good things did you have to say about charter schools?
The weird thing about this is, like, I just wanted to make it like, we gotta, charter schools suck. but it was like, as you did more and more reading, it's like there was a couple different points in there that hit on some topics that I thought were really good.
Mm-hmm.
When I was living in Wichita, we had a bunch of different like magnet schools that kind of mimicked the same thing as a charter school. Like there was an application process, and you could choose to go from a neighborhood school to a magnet school through an application process. So it kind of mimicked the charter school bit. But yeah, there was a lot of research out there about class size and how a lot of high schools, on like the top 10 high schools in the nation, being charter schools. So that part was pretty interesting. So it gave some compelling reasons for charter schools. But being from Nebraska, it's just like those guys are the devils. So we don't want to ever really, really endorse them.
That's one of the reasons why I split you into groups. Sometimes it's good to write about something you don't really believe in, because then you learn how to articulate a different position than you might believe in. Who else wrote about in favor of charter schools? Dylan.
I did too. Can I was just thinking, can I jump back to the bullying? I was just sitting here thinking. One of the things that I noticed, we just had conferences last week. Some of the kids that we, I guess, perceived as being some of the bullies in our school came in with their kids. Or with their parents, and the parents were almost yelling at the kids walking through the hallways and this and that, similar to what the kids do with other kids in school. And somebody a while back told me that it's almost like kids are teaching kids to be kids. So I don't even know if the students realize that they are being a bully. They're just acting like they are treated at home. So one of the things that I like that Carney's doing with the social emotional, like talking to the kids as far as, hey, here's how you're supposed to act. Here's how, I don't want to say normal, but this is normal behavior. Yelling yelling at other kids, or how some of the parents are yelling at the kids in conferences in the hallways. It was just almost like, geez Louise, it's like, how do we expect this kid to come in tomorrow acting like he's supposed to act when his mother or father is, on his case in the hallways? It's like it literally is a kid teaching a kid to be a kid.
Yeah, I remember that line in your posting was about kids being taught by parents who think they're kids.
Right. Yeah. And it's one of those things. It's kind of sad. So you just pull back and try to talk to them and see what you can do. But as far as the charter, one of the things that I read, I was reading about an article from Massachusetts that charter schools are supposed to, and how far they do or do not do it, whatever. But they're supposed to provide evidence of the faithfulness to the contracts that they have. Auditing and site visits are supposed to be a big thing. Otherwise, the state can close those schools without question, as far as auditing and financial annual situations they have.
Yeah, there's different kinds of charter schools, and probably the one that is most prevalent is where a board of education allows a group of parents to start a charter school. And but then with that goes per pupil cost. And so then they question is, do they have overhead? Do they have their own building? Or are they using a school building? Those kinds of issues that are a problem. The states where charter schools seem to be most prevalent are the ones that usually we think of as districts or states that don't have quality education. And some of you that were supportive of or opposed to charter schools mentioned that, or some of the issues. We look at the other side of it. What's wrong with charter schools in Nebraska? We don't have it, of course.
I like that John Oliver video. That was definitely hilarious. He was throwing out some F-bombs in there.
Don't tell the department chair that we're doing it.
No, it was good. I really liked that. I think like competition, like the pepperoni pizza example was like absolutely priceless. I mean, it made perfect sense to me.
Yeah, that was maybe probably a little slanted, but when he goes after it, he goes after it. I happen to pick that one up, but yeah,
I think the opposition side, I mean, one of the things is the funding, because depending on, obviously I'm from a rural school, so it probably wouldn't happen in my community. So you got to think Lincoln, Omaha area maybe, but I think that, if you lose funding, but you don't lose enough students to warrant reduction in expenses, and you're operating a district with less money, but still have the same expenses, that makes it difficult. I mean, if you can't decrease teachers because you're on the bubble, you still have the same cost to operate the building, whether you have, 1,000 kids or 1,200 kids. There's so many overhead expenses that don't change, that it just makes it more of a financial burden on public schools, depending on how many kids they lose.
We have 70 to 80% of the schools in the state do not get state aid. So why would that hurt them? Why would charter schools hurt people that aren't getting state aid? I mean, the student numbers aren't going. I'm playing devil's advocate because I can argue the other side pretty easily. I mean, your point about if you have 18 students instead of 20, you still
I think
one
what
teacher.
you're talking about, though, is those schools that aren't getting state aid aren't the urban schools.
No.
And that's not where the charter schools aren't going to go in a rural district.
No.
They're going to be in an urban district, and they've got state aid definitely. In Lincoln, Omaha, they're not in a non-equalized district like we are. So.
Right. But it would affect you probably if students are leaving because your budget size is somewhat dictated by how many students you have. You know,
Right.
your needs are based on how many students you have. So it would. That's why I was being a devil's advocate, because I think it would affect you even if you were a non-equalized district.
Right.
What else can you tell me about charter schools?
The article that I posted on my post gave some data summary. I think the perception is typically students who attend a charter school will outperform students of a public school, and the article gave some data to say that that is not accurate. So I want to say 1 in 6 kiddos that attend a charter school outperform a kiddo who attends a public school.
And how do charter schools select their students?
It depends on who you ask a little bit.
Yeah, I'm asking the question, but I've seen both sides of that some charter schools
Some do a lottery.
social economic and others don't. Yeah, some do the lottery, and it's probably the fairest way. But I think the states that have large urban areas, the potential for charter schools is probably greater. And those are also the schools, the states that sometimes aren't ranked as high. You know, we're 5th or 6th in student achievement. But Arizona, for example, I have a son that's in Arizona, and we go drive around, and somebody's turned a grocery store into a charter school. I mean, they're big in Arizona. I don't know where they're getting their funding, but there's big signs advertising such and such. They always have a real exciting name, but I don't know how good those really are. Now, we had a student in class last year. We taught in a charter school in Colorado. And she thought it was great. You know, thought it was the way to go. So, but she's in there. She knows probably what they're doing. But what about vouchers?
I laughed when you were talking about on topic, but a little off topic. I know today they had an NSAA meeting and they were talking about the recruiting for parochial schools. And so when you were talking about charter schools picking, it was interesting today that if you're from the Omaha metro area, there's a new athletic facility next to the Mark for club basketball, club volleyball. And when you walk in there, there's a certain parochial school that has promotional signs and banners throughout the entire building on every court. Mm-hmm. And so it's just interesting that, sidebar, parochial schools aren't supposed to recruit athletes, but yet that's where they're putting their money in an athletic facility.
Well, that 6'8" kid looks a little better academically probably than the 5'9" one.
He sits in a desk the same, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. You know, the issue with parochial school, I mean, with that is a big issue, but it isn't just parochial schools. I get frustrated with the transfer rules, you know, that students can transfer. There was 3 football players playing for Lincoln Northeast that all 3 transferred to either Southeast or Southwest. Southeast, I think, who has the good team. I just don't think the NSA should accept that. Now, that's inside the district, so
right.
Their local transfer rules probably. I think Omaha is a little bit more that where you start your high school, you got to sit out 90 days or whatever. But now, what is it, March something?
March 16th.
They can option enroll. I don't know. It's just a real difficult time. What about vouchers? What are vouchers?
Do those allow you to take your state funding and then and just use it in any way that you want to, like go to a parochial school or something like that? Yeah,
they're different kind of vouchers, but the kind that gets discussed in Nebraska, because it hadn't passed, is that they get a tax credit. You know, right now, if a student decides to go to Lincoln Pius, they pay the whole tuition. And what parochial schools would like to see happen would be that you could at least get a tax deduction for those dollars. If you get a tax deduction, where does that money come from?
Got to come from
taxes, so you're penalizing public school students. because they're not getting that deduction. They're not paying it either. But yeah, I have real, what's the secret, Kyle? Why is it parochial schools, if you look at the top 10 football teams and the top 10 basketball teams, 50% of them will be, that isn't right, 25% will be from parochial schools. And they only represent 8% of the schools. Why are they so successful?
I just when I was at Burke, you know, the Metro was quite a place to learn for athletics, especially me. When I grew up outside of Fred, Nebraska, and I was in the same building, K through 12. But they certainly attract. I hate using the phrase like the best students, and I guess that's a combination of academics and athletics, and they're well embedded in parochial schools and the elementary, systems in Omaha. And a lot of those times, those schools just feed to parochial middle and parochial high schools. And then a lot of parochial high schools cap their enrollment too, just to keep it where they want to, if they want to stay Class B, as opposed to public schools. We're in a conference where some of our conference schools in the capital are just having exponential growth, and going to be Class B very soon, and there's nothing they can do about that. So they're not following the same rules.
There's some states that use a multiplier factor. I think they use 135 for every student in a parochial school. They count as 1.35 when you do your student numbers, and that balances that out. Now, what's the rationale behind that? How can they do that? If you were going to argue that, parochial schools say it's unfair.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, when we play North Platte, St. Pat's, and in anything, we just get absolutely slaughtered. So I just definitely think like there's just I don't know. It just seems like like Kyle was saying, just playing by different rules.
Yeah,
they're kind of getting the cream of the crop. They're getting to the parents that are willing to pay the extra money for them to
that's a
join.
factor. Yeah, I don't think you can measure that factor, but it's there. If parents are interested in their kids enough to pay that tuition, they're probably from a family that's a little more supportive of family life or whatever. One of the factors is what's our percentage of special education and poverty. Special education can be from any 25 to 30% in a school district. Well, they're not always, there are not many of them in a parochial school, although now we serve special ed students in parochial schools, but that's for the law class, I guess. But and the other thing, I think parochial schools have to win. Now, why do I say that? Why do they have to win?
It helps with their recruitment
Sure.
to keep their enrollment up.
In North Platte, St. Pat's, North Platte High is not doing very well. St. Pat's is doing fair and sometimes pretty well. And so they've got to have that success factor, I think, to continue to draw students. So anyway, anything else on charter schools and vouchers? I think you want to, according to Mike Delaney with NCSA, you want to keep an eye on the charter schools voucher thing, that it gets brought up every year. And then all the administrators are contacting the legislators to indicate some of those things we've talked about. So you could be one of those people if you wanted to. Now I'm going to try something I don't do very well. Let's see if this works. There it is. Okay, whoops. Malia, I don't know why, you're the only one showing on mine, but
Oh.
anyway, what I wanted to go to is down here. So you can see this, topics that are scheduled. And then, if there's one or two that you really think would be, that you want to be sure we keep, or something you don't want to have on there. The next one is, do public schools have grounds to punish students off campus for off-campus speech? And that's already, I published that one already. The next one is failing schools. These are all in your textbook. And one of them is, should teacher preparation be controlled by the government, by the state? And another topic was, there's no zero grading. Should there be no zero grading policies? Do any of you have that, no zero grading policies?
Grading is such a disaster sometimes. We spend like hours and hours debating grading policies in order to give students effective feedback, and I sometimes I just don't. That should be an interesting one. Let's keep that one on there.
Okay, there are schools and that they have the no zero grading policy. There's positives, that they'll tell you that, well, Gretna is one of them, and they'll tell you that they have a great retention rate, and they obviously do well. But a lot of people will say it takes away from responsibility. They can't fail a test. They get to take it over and do some of those things. How about school safety? I don't know if that's in the book or not. I think last year we had students ask for that. And then there's technology and education. And then there's one that I do every year. It's called You Are the Czar of Education. What would you change? And then the last one that I usually do is for you to pick a topic of your own interest and write on that. Now, what isn't scheduled, and these are things that we have had other years and students, I had a rate afterwards. One of them is the road to virtual schooling smoothly paved, and it has to do with technology and online classes and those types of things. Are truly democratic classrooms possible? And I think that one was kind of a dead horse for us. It didn't really fit what our teachers wanted. Do teacher unions stymie school reform? And then the other one was, should teachers be armed? Any thoughts on adding any of those instead of the ones up above?
As the Farmer's Almanac prepares us to say that this winter is supposed to be just as bad as last, if not worse, one of the things we're looking at is that virtual schooling, and should we have a virtual school day, but it would be technically a snow day. So if anyone has any input or research on any of those topics, I would be interested in that.
Okay. Well, we got technology and education. We could probably work that in there if that's.
Mm-hmm.
Should school teachers be armed? That was a joke, I think. It's in our book, but I
thought we already kind of commented on that one.
What's that?
I thought there was already a section for that. A couple people already mentioned it. I know I wrote something on there.
Wrote it on where?
I think there was a discussion board on our on the class.
Oh yeah, those are old ones. I mean,
don't read mine then.
There's some that we will use and some we won't use. Do any of those for the road to virtual schooling, democratic classrooms, teacher union, stymie school reform? I didn't care much for that. Teachers be armed? I don't think so. So I guess that's why I have the ones that I have. Now, Heidi, you had mentioned social emotional equity. What would that include, or what would you be thinking?
Well, I think we even talked about it a little bit tonight, and just some of the upcoming concerns that we have with our current clientele in classrooms. So, I feel like we talked about it a little bit even through the things that we feel like are impacting schools today.
All right, I hope you're through looking at this. Okay. Any of those, or we're all right with the ones we have scheduled? I guess you can write me if there's one you think that's really different or you need. The other thing is, or any other topics that would you'd want to have that isn't in the book, why? You can email me and I can adjust that probably. Zoom meetings, how many do you want to have? This is your class.
Mhm.
3? I think we did 3 last year, 3 or 4, one each month, I guess. But is that, are you getting anything out of the Zoom, or would you rather just write it out and be done with it?
I like the Zoom meetings.
Well, is Wednesday, that's what the group last year picked, and I really didn't get a chance to talk to you about it. Is Wednesday a good night for you? I got other classes that are Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, Monday, and I'm not real fond of the Sunday ones, but my social life is getting killed. So, well, I'll probably do a Monday in 3 or 4 weeks then, and maybe we'll do two lessons, and we may not discuss one of them, or we might do 3 lessons. But I think that's easier than trying to meet every week, which I do with some of the other stuff. I don't either. I do about every 2 or 3 weeks with a couple of classes. Any questions? This is it's your class as far as there's things you want to add or want to talk about. I'm all for it. All right. Otherwise, I think we're free to go. And it's good to see you all again, and not all again, but see all of you. So anyway, I've opened that next lesson, and you all do well on the others. So unless there's any questions, why, you're free to go unless anybody has questions about class procedure or other classes or whatever. Are any of you going to be in practicum next spring? You've all had it, I suppose, I'm thinking, for the ones that are in the master's program. Okay. Well, let's hope that Nebraska does a little better this week.
Yes.
I'm a very loyal fan. I sat through the whole thing. I don't know if I want to do it again. You're free to go.
Good night, Dr. Nelson.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
All right. So I got to stop recording here so I can put it up for the other man, I guess. Maybe.